So everything is live and recording.
Wonderful. We'll wait a few more minutes for our attendees to join on Zoom and on YouTube.
Mhm.
We'll wait another minute. We have more guests joining us on Zoom right now, so we'll start in a moment. All right, it's 2:02. I think that's the good moment for us to start. So we're starting a next talk in conversation series, and today our special guest is Edwin Mohney, joining us from London, UK. Well, thank you, Gary and Neil, joining me in the student lounge to greet Edwin with his talk.
Hello.
Edwin.
Oh, we logged
Hi.
in. I realized we couldn't talk. Hi.
Oh, I can't hear you very well. How's it going?
No, we logged into the webinar and then we realized that we couldn't speak either. So
Oh, right.
yeah, we could just type in the chat. So we just want to come and say hello.
Oh, hello. Yeah, it's nice. It's nice to see you both.
Hey, how you doing?
Yeah, good, good. Thank you so much for having me.
Fantastic. Edwin, over to you for
Okay.
the talk and presentation. And then, well, everyone is welcome to type the questions in the chat, and I will share them with Edwin as we move forward, or type it in the YouTube chat as well. And then at the end, we will also open the floor for more questions from everyone.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Okay, yeah. So, um, I guess I hoping I can impart some kind of something to someone here. I think the plan is I'm just gonna run through my work, sort of start with what I'm up to now, which my name is Edwin Mohney. I was an online instructor for a while at the academy, so I'm very familiar um, with some of the students. And so you know, that's how I'm connected to this. And then I also just would like to, um, I basically am a freelance designer and artist, and I do a little bit of everything. Um, and I think what would be most helpful, I'm hoping, because I know I have insight into what student life is like, is to sort of work backward and then show my student work and then be able to answer any and all questions. So I would like really hope that people will ask as many questions as possible. Um, uh, yeah. So, okay, basically, who am I? Um, let me share my screen really quickly. Cool. All right. Literally gonna just run through. This is where everything's organized for me. So basically, I'm just gonna start with my sort of how I approach my work now is really just I have an art practice, which is really what my fashion collections are. And I keep them super independent, so they're almost diaristic, like they're very just what I'm about. And then I have this sort of other side of me, which is like special projects, freelance stuff, um, which include film, making music stuff, doing things for celebrities. And I also co-founded a tech startup in 2021. Um, and so that's really what I've been up to the last year and a half, 2 years, really intensely. But just sort of want to share with you just an example. So this is like a collection I released a few weeks ago. And really like this was the first one I did from London, having moved back. So for me, this was really about kind of like saying goodbye to Buffalo, which is where I originally came from. And so it really, my thought process with this was really like reconnecting with where it all began for me, which was sort of, up here. I don't know if anyone's been to upstate New York, but where I'm from, it's just dotted with all these like hunting blinds. Um, and so I think like
We
this
can't hear you
perfectly
well,
sums.
Edwin.
Sorry again.
We couldn't hear you well for a second.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes. The connection.
Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yes.
Great. Okay. Um, yeah. So basically, like these hunting blinds were basically like where I was like a little kid and would hang out and kind of like imagine all this crazy stuff. That's how I got into sort of costume and fashion. So this is sort of the most recent work that I've done. And like I said, I keep it really free and independent. I really believe in keeping it super, um, just completely whatever I want it to be. And I've been collaborating with a friend of mine named Joel, who has been styling it. Um, and with this one, we just took the photos ourselves with a model and wanted to keep it as sort of straightforward and fun as possible. It's like a fall winter collection, all this kind of stuff, lots of jackets. I'm just trying to go through it so I can show you more stuff. But I think what's interesting, and I think you'll see in my other work, is like it's all very moody. Like so this one's very kind of has this like melancholic kind of strange vibe. Um, this one as well, like, I do all the prints myself, and the pattern cutting is all sort of loosely based. I don't know if anyone's familiar with like Julian Roberts, who did this kind of subtraction cutting in the UK in like the early 2000s, who I'm like currently still obsessed with. But yeah, this one was sort of just like everything was made by hand, which is how I like it too. I like to make everything. So this is sort of like the general lineup. Um, Before that, I was in LA. So this is the last one I did in LA, which is called Syntagm. Um, the one I just showed you doesn't have a title because it does, but it's coordinates and I don't know how to say it. Anyway, so a syntagm, for those who don't know, is it's like a part of speech. So it's a French philosopher named Ferdinand de Saussure kind of described linguistics as like being made up of these parts of speech called syntagm, where you have an action or a thought. A syntagm can be a phrase like "I like you." A syntagm can be a full sentence. It's all made up of this. So I was really interested in the idea of playing for a long time. So this says syntagm part one. The idea is to basically create clothing which starts narrative and can be used as a part of speech, which sounds so different to what you're seeing because basically you're looking at a bunch of crazy sci-fi weirdness, which is all very early sort of beta Adobe AI stuff. So I was just like, how can we make really? I was playing around, so this is all kind of like grungy stuff, but I just love it. And so the idea is like you take apart a collection, and by remixing all of the different pieces, you come up with a totally separate meaning. Um, and that was really like the overall idea behind this collection, and then also even into the one I showed you previously. Like that's sort of somehow it's like a super logical and nonsensical meaning. Um, But yeah, so all these photos I took myself, again, with just, this is like a really good friend of mine who came over, and I really think that like, again, like for me, it's diaristic. It's totally about just like having a space to create really freely. Um, and then I sort of loan it out, or um, it goes on shoots and things like that. So this one, sort of just before leaving LA, um, which uh, so you can see kind of like I react to everything really differently. So has a very kind of like LA, this sort of like deserty, washed out look. And I think if you look at the previous one, you can tell I was in Buffalo and sort of like then was in the UK making it, because it has this very dreary sort of woodsy vibe. Um, so then I would say like this collection called Euphrosyne. Euphrosyne is a goddess of good cheer and joy. And so I with this collection this was like the collection that when I was in LA, really I had the most sort of, I would say the last two have been at these like weird moments where I'm like moving. So I haven't been able to really collaborate that much with them. So this one, though it was like the right place, right time, and had a lot of it just had a lot of movement. So this is sort of the idea here was really like a lot of dolls, and looking at sort of like Flickr fetish culture. It was borrowed by Kim Petras and Chloe Cherry, Isabella Love Story, and sort of like shot on these people, Barbie Ferreira. So I've just mixed these in, but essentially like what I found in keeping with my career is like by making something that was really true to myself and really expressive, and keeping it really like not, I sold a few, like quite a bit of these like sort of smaller pieces, but then I would have things that were more sort of performative, and like that would gain me more traction to lend things, which would lead to other work. So there's like a kind of really informal. I'm not I don't have like a team of marketing or anything. It's just me. So it's just more of like trying to find this balance of like how can I put something out which will make me happy but also bring me more work. And so that's sort of, I think, one of the things that's good to think about as a student of like what you want to be doing, is sort of fostering like if you really want to go into more of making performance things, or you want to go work for a company, like thinking about um, how you approach the balance of what you're actually designing. So yeah, this collection again was just like a whole kind of stream of consciousness. Um, Cutting to Tower of Hercules. This was my pandemic collection. I think everyone has a pandemic collection where you make work when we were all locked down. So for me, that was this. Um, and I had a friend who reached out and he shot these photos, um, which are really beautiful. But it's a digital landscape that he was like, it was a really random, just, you know, reached out to me. I had just moved to LA. We were in lockdown. And he was like, "Hey, I'm in Australia. I know I've never met you, but I really want to make something with you." And I was like, "Great." And so it felt like this message in a bottle kind of a feeling. Um, so the collection was just literally made of like these pleated dresses that I had randomly been collecting. Because I was like, I'm gonna cut them out and do something. So this collection's all upcycled, which is what most of my work is, to be honest with you. Um, and then I don't have a proper lookbook where I shot it. It's really lived a life of its own. So these are all shots from different publications. But you can tell like what's here really. It's all sort of, it's these sort of swirly pieces. So it's been in Vogue Australia. It was featured in Rush magazine. It was like in a few different personal projects. But yeah, so this is sort of when I began my toe in the sort of digital space, just kind of talking about how like a digital landscape, I think it was super interesting to sort of see real work then photoshopped in. And there was an artist who created this whole sort of environment, which was really cool. Um, and yeah, I think with this, the goal was that you would not be able to tell these were upcycled garments. I think that they look like they were made this way. And so I think like that's always the challenge. That's sort of the challenge I had with this in general. And then Buffalo Child. This was sort of like the prompt for this was like, how do you make a collection out of collecting? Um, and so for me, I stumbled upon I'm a hoarder in training, I think. So I would say that like when I go to when I I've had to stop, but when I would go to an AmVets, I'd be obsessed with things that came in duplicates. Like it's just so bizarre to me to see like, you know, a bunch of the same turtleneck all in a row. And I'd be like, oh my God, this is like a magic. So one time essentially I found um, my partner and I were in, I don't know if I have a group shot here. But these suits, essentially, there was 40 of the same suit or very similar, and they're all different colors. And I love the idea of like I'm presenting a collection of things that have been collected and then represented as something that's been made. And so it was about less about a collection being something that's sewn and made and more about actually finding it and then creating an image and that image being part of the collection itself. I think that a lot of my work plays with like what is a collection, what is a fashion project. Um, so that's where that, and then finally, like I would say the one before that, which was my first professional work, was really like this is my master's collection from Central St. Martin's, which really kind of like was like the first project that really gave me sort of any sort of like thrust into the industry, which is wonderful. Um, it was at London Fashion Week, and so this is like an image shot by Tim Walker. Um, and then yeah, so it was like heavily based on lots of different influences, but very sort of heavily tailored, looking at like medieval princesses mixed with Amazon purchases. There's like a pair of Prada heels that I found that's like in the bra here. This is my baby mountain ghost. Um, I don't know. You tell me. I think the theme here is just why not? I think when previously, when looking at the collections coming out of the school, which is Central St. Martin's, I did my bachelor's and my master's at Central St. Martin's in women's wear. Everything was just very logical and very explained. And I love the idea of being like the theme is no theme. It was just pure kind of joy, chaos, things that brought me joy. So these are my illustrations too. Um, and yeah, there's a pair of Donald Trump heels, which like really, if you Google this kind of moment, there was a lot of backlash in the British press, which was really funny. And it was a whole kind of crazy moment, but yeah. And then actually be very happy to switch over and show you the video from the show, which tell me, hopefully you can hear it. there's a really long pause because she got stuck in the doorway on the way out, leading up to like backstage. I think you can feel the chaos, but literally like on one of those first few looks, like you had to sew people into the outfits. It was like everything that could go wrong was going wrong. So it was just pure kind of chaos behind the scenes. But, yeah. Yeah. Okay. So that was, thank you. That was, yeah, my MA project,
Edwin,
which
Edwin,
essentially,
we have a few questions here from the audience
yeah, sure, go for
based on
it.
this show. So yes, everyone is stunned by the collection that you shown. One attendee said, Lou Rayfield says, "Love your architecture," and then the
Oh, thank you.
shoe are supreme. And then there is a question: how long it take you to get each look done, and what's the time frame you had to make this collection?
For this one, for the master's one, it was really you have a longer period of time because it's like a lot of development. I would say most of it gets done within about a 2 month period, because there's a lot of like, um, there's you just because it's school, you're like making a lot of things and throwing a lot of things away. So it's a lot of like you're developing a jacket and then you're like one day, I think with these sort of pointed, I call them the chicken dresses. But with these, it was really like, oh, I had been working on this kind of like a jacket dress for many months. And then one day was like, okay, I need to like make these huge shoulders. So then it's like, but then that pattern gets scrapped. So it's really like,
Yeah.
I feel like the whole period is like 6 months, but you really end up making most of it in the last 2 months to a month. And it's just because you're coming up with ideas because the closer to the deadline you get, I feel like there's just more ideas. And that got me into a lot of trouble because I was chronically sort of coming in with new work and everyone would sort of say, like, oh my God, why does this look so different to what you showed us last week? And I'd be like, it's better. And they'd be like, okay, yeah, but it was very contentious. But I would say, yeah, for most of my other projects, the other collections I showed you, I juggle it with doing my other freelance stuff. So it's really like I'll try to make like 2 or 3 dresses or pieces in a day, and I'll just sit at my machine all day and kind of crank them out. Um, because that might be the only day I have for the next week or so. So yeah, I feel like usually it's about a month of solid work to sort of make a full collection. If that answers the question.
Yeah. And then we have another question from Victoria, fashion design major from Florida, who is asking, what are some of the most uncommon and unexpected items you found useful in upcycling for your clothing collections?
Ooh, so this is a two-parter because I would say I want to come back and sort of show you my bachelor's project, which we'll kind of end on because I want to basically show everyone that like you can do something really different. But my bachelor's was all made out of duct tape. And so that's not really upcycling, but that's more of like using something that's really ordinary. And I use that in upcycling because I find, it's really helpful. So that's probably the strangest, but I would also say that, um, gosh, I think I used, there's wire that is like pallet wire. And it's like clear and it basically, I don't know, it's like just like a plastic cheap wire that they use to wrap industrial pallets in. And basically in Buffalo, I had my little studio in like in a factory that I was working at and working for, and basically I took the like wire and it worked perfectly as boning in a corset. So I used the actual sort of disposable fabric that the factory was using that I could get really for free because it'd just be scraps, using the pallet wire as a boning. So I think like that for me was like the most exciting thing because it wasn't just I think it's most exciting when you can upcycle the most useful parts, like a zipper, like those are usually the hardest things to upcycle. Like you have to buy a zipper or buy a button or buy whatever. So I think if you can, find boning or find something to make structure out of, that's always really the most exciting.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you. So, and we have 2 other questions that if you were planning to gather them later, then we can answer later. But one was from Dane Fraser. What is your favorite project? Are we
Ooh.
getting there? I guess.
What's my favorite project? I don't know.
The one
I
you're
don't know
working
if
on now.
let me think about it. I feel like can I come back to that one? Because I feel
Sure.
like um yeah, I'm gonna come back to that one. But I
Give it a
think,
thought.
yeah,
Of
good
course.
question, Dane Fraser.
And then there was another question
Oh,
from Meril, who is watching us on YouTube. You mentioned being your own marketing department. Do you mostly rely on social media or more in real life networking?
ooh, That's a great question. It's actually both. I would say that for me, my Instagram got hacked last year. I fell prey to like one of these like things. Um, and so someone took it over and I lost a bunch of followers and which is fine. But like I've just noticed that like ever since that happened, I like had to get in touch with someone at Meta. It was a whole thing. And they like unlocked it and did this whole, thankfully a friend of a friend of a friend worked there. Um, but essentially like my Instagram, what I've noticed, my Instagram gets like ever since that day gets like no people can tag me and stuff. I won't see it. There's some kind of it's been put on something, which has made me have to get more crafty. So basically my Instagram is sort of like a social media is really just a way to kind of like use my portfolio, but it definitely was a part of marketing at one point. I feel like more than anything that happened, but really it's like when you're marketing yourself, it's just about putting your best foot forward. So it just meant like, I've really put time into making my website. I put time into being intentional with like what's out there on the internet. Um, but I would say like mainly with networking, it's about being kind above anything. Never show that you're not grateful. Always be kind. Like, even if someone is paying you an awful day rate, but you have to do the job, you have to be as kind as you possibly can because end of the day, someone else who's on that job will see you and really value the fact that you stayed cool under pressure. Easier said than done, 110,000%. But I would say that that is the best marketing is just always being a hard worker and being kind.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And then we had another kind of marketing related question that I might throw in right now. So
Yeah.
from a music production major watching us from Austin, Texas, is
Mm.
asking if it's applicable how your Facebook and Instagram ads implemented in your marketing strategy. Do you even do Facebook and Instagram ads? If at all?
No, I actually don't because I really feel like it looks really cheesy, if I'm honest with you. I think that like the minute I see the word sponsored on anything, I get the ick. And I don't know if that's just because I'm sort of um the most I don't know if that's just my, me being whatever stubborn, but yeah, I just think do it, kind of incognito.
Great. And then one last question that's still in the marketing domain, and then we'll move forward. So Lou Rayfield is asking, how do you find representation as a DJ, a photographer? And this student is in MFA directing. So from an MPT department, I guess.
Okay, so how would I find representation as a DJ or a photographer?
Photographer. Mhm.
I think honestly, if you're in that world, you gotta just like don't worry about the representation, worry about the work. I think like you have to do good work. That goes for anyone. I'm just saying I think like at this stage, like the rather than worrying about like getting that kind of representation, I would really focus on what the work is and what kind of photographers you admire, like where they're at. Like look at the photographers and who they're represented by and try to get your work up to that standard. Because ultimately, what I've seen is like people who are, even with DJs, like a lot of times when you're starting out, you are hired because you can do something that they needed someone else for, and that person fell through. And so it's like if you can take an image similar to what someone else who is represented, uh, you know, if you can do that and you're saving the day, then you're going to get booked again. So I think it's really like you have to just kind of stay focus on the work, not the representation. The representation will come.
Yes, absolutely. So true. So I think now we wrapped up with that portion of questions. And I know you were going to also show us
Yeah.
the video of your BA collection or other projects you were working on.
Yeah. So okay, back on to just doing more. I just wanted to share more about like what I do um uh in my like normal everyday life. Like what? So like I said, I started a tech startup. So the other part of so what I just showed you is really more my art practice. It's really what fed a lot of my sort of more my jobs. And so I have really been knees deep in this tech startup for a while. I've been doing consulting and things like that. So I can't unfortunately show you too much of what that is, but I can show you that, I make this sort of like I do a lot of AI generated artwork, and doing like, trying to like just push. This is all things that I've made. This is like our social media campaign. Um, and so this is where it's sort of like as a creative director, it's not just overseeing the fashion design, but also the image. So Proud Society, we're a fashion innovation studio. Essentially, we're designing like metaverse outfits, skins for interoperable platforms, meaning Fortnite, uh, Unreal Engine, ideally like lots of different things. So it's all sort of under wraps, but these are sort of my artworks which speak to what we've been working on. Um, but other thing too is like I work as a costume designer. So this is a upcoming film I worked on last year called Room Temperature, which is not out. So this is all sort of like just snippets from the film.
Edwin, I'm sorry, I think we don't see it on the screen, at least on my end here in the studio.
Oh,
See it on the screen. If you were showing it, it's more kind of a black part of your screen.
you know what? It's because let me do a new share really quick.
Uh-huh.
Can you see this?
Now, yes.
Okay, I'm sorry, everyone.
Yes. So if you were commenting on this before, we couldn't see it on the screen.
Okay, perfect.
Mhm.
Okay,
For the art practice, neither
rewind.
you mentioned it, but we couldn't see it on the screen. So please get back
Yeah.
to that part.
Okay, so basically what I said, art practice, this is really like what I've been up to is I'm the chief creative officer, co-founder, creative director of Proud Society. So I'm basically like the creative head behind this. Like I said, it's like metaverse. These are the AI sort of branding content that I've been creating over the last few months. Um, so this is all sort of more in keeping with like the image of what I create and what I've been doing most recently. Room Temperature, this was a film I worked on last year. This was like it's over 100 outfits. It's like a full feature. It should be coming out later this year. I would say to answer the question of what my favorite project is, I would say it's this one, which is Playland, which was the first film um, that I costumed like outright. These are sort of like the cast sketches. Um, and I don't know if anyone watches Drag Race, but Lady Bunny was in the film, which is really iconic to get to work with Lady Bunny, and essentially put her in like a period piece, which if you're familiar with Lady Bunny, she only wears like one or two things as in her drag persona. So it's like so legendary to get to make her something. And, you know, this is my, this is where I want to, if you're a fashion design student, this is what I want to say about technical flats, which is what I was teaching for very long.
You also see it on YouTube as well. It was not, but it's now. Yes.
No, I was getting texts from people saying they couldn't see.
Oh, good, Edward. Yes, we were still like troubleshooting on people not seeing your screen before, but we all can see it now. So it's all good.
Okay. Are we good still?
Yes, we're perfect.
Okay, great.
That's exciting.
I just wanted to say when it comes to laying out flats, because I've seen so many projects when people lay out their flats or whatever. This is how I think it's best to, if you're presenting work, keep it simple, keep it clean. That's all I'll say about it. If anyone has questions about flats, I am more than happy to answer because that is a specialty. Yeah, so this is like one of the cast shots of the film. That I absolutely love. Let me switch my share and go back to I have another quick video to show you, which is this is the trailer to the film.
You know, caught me just in time.
Shaving off?
On the back of a swarm.
I was born in Boston, and I'm used to the racism. People keep saying, "What, Boston? I can't believe that." And those of us, you know, who knew would look at each other and smile.
No performance, no sales,
Tips.
no umbrella. Expect rain.
Last time it rained, I went on vacation till 65.
Where'd you do time?
Paris.
They were throwing money at me every which way, money, dollar bills, and I'm down on my hands and he's picking up the nickels and dimes. I stood up and fell on the floor again, and I was up in my hands and he's up and down for over 20 minutes. The place was hysterical. They were going crazy.
Yeah. So there's that was the trailer for that. And then essentially going back here, so those are sort of the films. One of the questions I saw as well that came up was, what was your first job after college? So this is one of them. This is one of the first ones, was basically like working as a I worked on this one big festival scene of Guava Island, which is like, it was in Havana, Cuba, with like Childish Gambino and Rihanna in it. And basically there was this huge scene with like 300 extras, and me and another co-collaborator sort of took over designing for that big scene, as well as like helping with other things. So this is sort of one of those jobs that really, what came through personal connections. So then jumping over here to like special projects, so just go really quick. This is sort of more of the celebrity things that I've made. So it's just sort of like custom pieces for Anita, styling, very dear friend and bandmate, Tanya. And this is sort of the same group, but in a different name. This is how I met them, actually. This is the band that I play with in LA. And I styled them for Dazed and Confused magazine. Worked on the wardrobe designer for this Grimes album cover. I did this reconstruction, a really random job. It was Trent Reznor from Nine Inch Nails. This might be too old of a reference for some students, but we basically recreated this look for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which is really, really cool. Made this outfit for Frank Ocean, and sort of did the costumes for his staff at the Prep Plus parties, which is a whole thing. Vegas residency for Christina Aguilera. I made these outfits you see her in. It was basically like being locked in a hotel room for a week and just, you just do nothing but sew because it's so last minute. It was really crazy. This was a custom piece for Mary J. Blige. The suit I made for her for this Max Cosmetics shoot. Show studio. This was sort of like I was leaving London and I was asked by Nick Knight to do a panel for Show Studio for when they used to do more of like a talk panel. And he was like, I don't, they were like, we don't really have a big budget for what we just like, do you have anything? And I was like, yeah, I have all my bedroom furniture I can't bring with me back to America. So all of this is made out of the bedroom furniture that I had. So the chair was like, I think they had a few pieces, like they had a weird kind of, this was they had two halves of a chair, which I cut up here, covered a bench. Oh no, I brought the bench, covered it in duct tape. There's a live stream you can watch here of like how long it took to make it all. But this was like my mannequin that I had in my room. This is made out of the mattress. Same with these foam pieces. This was my bedside table. And I just kind of did this sort of like weird ritual of ruining these things so that I could kind of say goodbye. Yeah. Then that kind of came about because Nick Knight reached out about this project. And he shot, this is like a huge billboard in London. And there was this sort of like Nick Knight does this Knightsbridge thing. And so I made this big tape night, which is really cool. And then, yeah, essentially, like, to answer your question, what was my first job out of college was this, which was like insane to me. A good friend at the time, Ibn Kamara, who's editor-in-chief now of Dazed and Confused, was a stylist that was asked to sort of help style Beyonce for her previous tour, which is On the Run 2. So not Renaissance, the one before. Yeah, basically, I remember it was like I just graduated my MA, and I get a call from my friend being like, "Do you want to come to, like, can you come to Jamaica and help us sew these things up?" And it was like, "Is this a real question?" Of course. And so basically, like, these were the pieces I made for her. And so that was like very lucky. That really started me off in this sort of costume world. And really sort of set me up, which I'm so grateful for to this day. It was just such an amazing opportunity. And then before that, this was sort of my first big other thing was like my bachelor's collection, which what I really want to share with you is I hope that if there's any BA fashion students here who are watching and you're sort of like, do I go for the crazy thing or do I go for the simple thing? Go for the crazy thing always at this stage, like be free. I think you can tell from my work from over the last, like, since 2018, this is 2016, but what you can see is that, like, I don't feel like it's hindered me at all that I've gone to doing crazy stuff. I feel like if anything, it's like I do something really crazy and then it gives me the confidence to say, okay, I've done something crazy now. I know how to do the basics and to do the sort of fundamentals in a simple, effective way. And it makes it more interesting. It's like, so I just want to share with you what the show of this was like. Let me bring this up. So this was my BA show. And so I made the music. All of this is made of duct tape. It's all casts of myself and my friends and family. So I would wrap them in plastic and then wrap them in tape, reinforce it. So literally, you know, my dad, my mother, my husband, best friends, me, everyone's bodies are in this collection. Thank you. Yeah. So that's sort of that's my work for everybody. And so yeah, I'd just like to open it up to questions.
Thank you, Edwin. We have a question. What inspired you to make this last project, the last design?
It was like all of my fear. I think I was like, you know, as you do when you're a final year student, you're like, oh my God, like, what am I gonna do with the rest of my life? And I think at some point I found that I had discovered the sort of tape method by just playing around and sort of trying to look at new materials and um yeah, it was like somehow then I found that like when I would tape something, I would have so much fun that I was like, oh, I'm just gonna like kind of let the anxiety build up and then just like make these pieces. So it was really kind of each one was like a different fear. So one was like fear, I don't know. I think in general it was just sort of like trying to create a bit of a nightmare.
That's a very impressive nightmare. That's amazing.
Thank you.
There is a question also. Did you major in costume design? Asks Jada.
No, I actually so I did fashion. Um, but I would say my work has always kind of had a cost like a character driven element to it, even going back. So I think it's interesting because a lot of the costume work I get is really about more fashion. It's like it's not pure costume and it's not pure fashion. It's always some kind of hybrid.
It's a combination
Yeah.
of those two. Yes. And we had another question again from Jada, but earlier on. Are there any skills or hobbies unrelated to your fashion practice that you feel have helped you with your collections and with building your brand?
Yeah. So I mentioned before I was playing with a band in LA and I would say the biggest thing is I play saxophone. And that fuels me so much. I think growing up and understanding music and understanding this kind of like how to put soul and how to put emotion into a creative piece. It was like the minute that I stopped playing like sax as a day-to-day thing, like leaving high school and then going into college, I was like, oh my God, I'm missing this outlet. I need to put it somewhere. So that's fashion became that. Um, so I think it fused there, and then basically like now later in life, I've picked it back up and was playing like gigs this summer and was just meeting people, and so performing really informed a lot of what I was making. So it's I think for me, playing the saxophone and being a musician is like a big part of it.
I so agree. Absolutely. Fashion and music go hand in hand. And
Yeah.
We don't have right now any more questions from the audience, but I have a question. What
Yeah.
are you working on right now? If you can
Right now, literally like um working on a still working on this sort of like tech company that we've been building. We've been building these these outfits for a while and they're so amazing. And it's just been like we're the tech, it's that thing with technology where you're like trying to get everything up to the same level so that it's ready because things are always evolving. So the minute you kind of run and you try to catch up to the goalpost, it moves. But we're planning a show at some point. And with this, we're really thinking something that's like really theatrical. So it's been a lot more of that. But I would say my next sort of personal work will be I really want to write a film and sort of get more into creating film that is led by fashion and costume narratively. So that's sort of my next big goal.
Fantastic. We have a question back to your BA collection. How long did the BA collection take to produce? Was it a similar time frame as with MFA?
Yeah, so MFA was like no. The short answer is no. Like
longer?
I made my BA collection in 2 weeks. That is the truth because I it was I it was really um yeah, once again, I make things and throw it away, make things, throw it away, make things, throw it away. And it was really bad on my MA, but it was even worse in my bachelor's because my tutors would just say you're giving me a headache. They literally would email me like stop making things. But yeah, thankfully it was just this thing of like I have to get so warmed up that it just becomes this like I have to make it fast. So yeah, it was all made in about 2 weeks. Which don't do that. Don't do that. If you're a fashion student, do not do that. That was bad of me. I hate that I shared that with you. I planned it all in advance. I executed it over many, many, many months.
So yes, so it was a long ideation, but then quick realization, right? Quick.
Exactly. I think like that red outfit that you saw, I had that jacket for like 3 months, and I was carrying it around like everything is in this red jacket, but I couldn't make anything that kind of felt as strong as it until I just sat and made everything out of tape.
Amazing. We have a question from Victoria who says, possibly a weird question to ask. I at times enjoy watching videos on social media that parody fashion shows because they also generate further ideas. Do you find comedy or parody useful in your creative process?
Yeah, definitely. I've had so much of my work featured in like those videos, like that pool one that you saw. That there's a video, yeah, there's like a few videos that are just like there's like it has so many views, it's insane. I remember one time I found like I went on Facebook. I never go on Facebook, but I went on Facebook and someone tagged me in this video. It had over like 35 million views and it was just my show and it was all people just like laughing and like making fun of it. But like for me, that fuels it. That's the point. I think that fashion is so it's vital to me. I live it. I need to do it. I need to dress up. But I would say I'm truthfully like not a very vain person. Like I'm not a naturally I have my own style, but I'm like strangely like not interested in being overly stylish, if that makes sense. Like for me, I like things that are really natural and really easy to wear. Um, so I find like I'm always that person who's looking at people who are overdressed, kind of being like, you look crazy. And so I like to sort of yeah, sort of throw like, mix stir the pot, if you will, and sort of say in a platform where everyone takes like if you think like my master's was like, people are like, oh my God, it's a master's program, it's Central St. Martin's, it's all this stuff. There's some very serious people on that course. And then I was like, here's a big baby bottle pacifier condom dress made of tape. Like I just think it's for me, that's art. That's what I enjoy.
Fantastic, thank you. And so again, Jad asks a follow-up question. Is there a way to keep in touch? I'm an aspiring costume fashion hybrid designer, and I would love to keep up with the film you're working on and the tech startup. So what's the
Yeah,
best?
I mean, you can just reach. I'm on Instagram. It's at Edwin Mohney or at Edwin_Mohney. It's also you can just find me on my Instagram. Or sorry, Instagram website. Yeah, just get in touch. I'm super available.
Perfect, thank you. And there is a question on YouTube that I hope we'll all have a positive answer soon. So Narelle is asking, do you no longer teach at the academy? But we do hope you'll be able to teach with us again soon.
Yeah. Yeah. So I no longer teach at the academy because I moved. And so I was there when I was in America, which is great. And then when I moved, yeah, I couldn't. So but I still keep in touch. I think I had such a positive, wonderful experience with the academy. I'll always kind of be here as a, you know, as a connection. So hopefully in the future, yes, one day again.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. And then another question from Dean Fraser. Do you have any show on Instagram or on Facebook? Meaning, I believe, are your shows shared on Instagram or Facebook? They're shared.
I don't. I recently archived all of my work because I think, like I said, my Instagram was hacked. So it changed my relationship to it where it's just portfolio. So it's just my more recent work. But you can find everything on my website. Like I keep my website as sort of where I have all of my archive. So yeah, check it out there.
Thank you. Yeah. And then, well, we don't have other questions from our attendees yet, but I have one. What's your kind of relationship and feeling about the fashion media altogether? Fashion press, journalists,
Yeah.
writers, critiques, like what's your kind of overall feeling of relationship with modern fashion criticism altogether? What do you feel?
Oh my gosh. Well, it's a loaded question for me because I have done a lot of research into like Roland Barthes and sort of the relationship between image and text. So I can literally get fundamental because I really like linguistics. It's like my other kind of weird hobby.
Please
Um,
do.
but so I think that like if anyone isn't familiar with Roland Barthes, Barthes is like wrote about sort of the fashion system and how fashion cannot function without text. And in general, like you what transforms an object into a piece of fashion is the text itself, it is the criticism. So it's very interesting because I find myself very frustrated by, naturally by this kind of relationship of like, I can produce the work. That is my job as an artist. That's my job as a fashion person. It is actually the critic's job to sort of give context as to what it is. So the best thing I can say is like, let's say we all have an image of a shoe in our mind. I want everyone just to imagine a shoe. You see this shoe, right? We all see a different shoe. This shoe gets put into a magazine. If you open up a magazine, you just see an image of a shoe, it doesn't mean anything to you other than it's just an image of a shoe. It's the critic, it's the media who's going to write about it and say, give you context. The caption is going to say, gorgeous pink, you know, lambskin Manolo Blahnik, whatever. And so it's going to like give you certain information and give context as what it is. I think in today's age, I would say that it's great that everyone has a voice. And I think that like there is this sort of because of I'm hopeful, I want to say hopeful, because I think that what we've experienced is like it's just a pendulum swing of like all of a sudden designers for the longest time had all of this power of saying, here's what I'm gonna make. I'm going to design for women in a certain way. And I think there was a lot of misogyny. I truly do. I think there was a lot of gay men designing for women in a way that wasn't great. I think there is a lack of diversity, all this stuff. And then I think that what's been amazing about fashion criticism is that there's been a lot of sort of talk about how do we fix this. And so I think you hear a lot of complaints from designers like, oh my God, like there's so many critics and there's all this cancel culture. And I think that is part of where we're at today, but I'm hopeful that like the design community has to like kind of not push back in a bad way, but like has to stand its ground and find its feet amidst this kind of discourse. So I think fashion media with where we're at and criticism, it's very key. It's like you can never divorce, right? Like there's no divorcing fashion media because it's part of what literally fashion is. But I think that it's important that designers create and stand behind what they create and really are more authentic and thoughtful and intentional with what they design so that even if someone is saying something negative, it's not the end of the world because they believe in it.
Yes.
So that's my
yes.
very sorry.
I'm so glad I asked that question. Being a journalism coordinator, so it's precious. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
For everything you shared. I so agree. And yes, especially about everything being intentional. And then if anyone has a different opinion about it, still your intention is what matters. And the realization that,
Yeah, and I just think that like it's okay if people don't like it. Like I'm, and not to say that you should always, I think you should think about how people will feel. I'm not saying that like it's okay to be like making insensitive work or anything like that. But I just mean, if someone doesn't like the shade of pink that you've chosen, don't change the shade of pink if you like it. It's your work. Someone else in the world will like it.
if it means in this context that this very pink should be in, then
Yeah,
it should be in.
yeah, exactly.
One more question from our Zoom attendee, from Dean Fraser, asking, did you have any bad show you had been in? So like bad project or like a negative experience?
I think, I'm trying to think. I can think of so many bad situations. I wouldn't say there's any bad projects, like truly. I think projects always they're almost like a neutral thing, right? Like they come out no matter if they're good or bad. But there's definitely been like experiences where, like I said, you're way underpaid, but you have to just be there, smile, and be kind. You know, I think you have to, if I could go back and tell me, like, there's definitely moments where I would be on set or I'd be working and I was like very kind of cocky coming out of school, and I think you're young and naive and you think you know everything. And I think even if you're being polite, you still can carry yourself in a way which comes across as like overly confident, which I see with a lot of graduates because they think they've like done this thing, they've climbed the mountain. So it's important that no matter what situation, even if you think you're better than it, to always act as if it is your first day on a job, period. Like, so I have, yes, been a part of bad projects, but they've never ended up bad. But bad situations happen on the best of jobs.
Right. I'll ask another question that kind of part of what our graduates find challenging. What do you feel about the major, bigger brands copying young designers? That happens across the industry. What do you
Yeah, it
think
does.
as designer, as educator, as designer who fairly recently, went through this, being,
Yeah.
transitioning from the student view of the world to professional? What do you feel the best approach would be for one to, again, protecting one's designs is extremely hard, nearly impossible.
Yeah.
What's your take on it?
I think at this moment that you have to design for yourself, truly. I think like big designers are gonna rip off smaller brands inevitably. Like I have friends who have more traditional like jobs as senior designers at big companies. Um, and they like the pressure that those jobs put on their designers to have to come up with new ideas. It's like you would empathize with like why they're grabbing up image from somewhere and it's on a mood board. And so it's like, and I know for a fact that those people are not trying to like, I think the norm is that people will kind of borrow a little from here and borrow a little from here and are really trying to like come up with something new. I always think that that really is what people are trying to do, um, which is great. I think it's more of like what I really cannot stand is like, something like Shein or Topshop's gone. I just dated myself. But like Zara, stuff like that, which are literally like you see people they'll just literally copy exactly what they've done. I think that's horrible. Um, I think you got to get clever with what the design is, right? Like, um, I have a friend who she makes like body swimsuit, these like really beautiful bathing suits, right? And like cover-ups that like the Jenners wear, like the Kardashians wear them. Um, but what makes her special is like the prints that she does. They can't really be reproduced very easily. So the kind of design where it's like a floral whatever, it's like they can copy that, but they can't really reproduce like her authentic kind of drawing. So I think it's important that whatever the design is, you have to have some kind of twist in there. For me, it's like how I drape things, I think is like that's my signature. I think you need to just make sure that you have something that only you can do and follow that.
This is precious. Thank you so much. And before we wrap up, what's your advice to the students who are currently working on their graduate collections, will be graduating soon, going into the big world, or deciding to continue their education and do the master's afterwards. So your
Yeah, I
advice
think
to the students of today.
yeah, I think to be confident, don't be afraid to make bad work. I think bad work is just as important as good work. You have to like the more times you try to make the best thing possible and fail at it is the best thing you can do, because you'll get closer and closer to making the best thing possible. Um, make sure finish you like hem everything, press everything after you sew a seam. These are all things I'm telling to students specifically because I've seen it too many times. Make sure you're not buying all your fabrics from Joann Fabrics. There's other places you can get them online. Um, I think that you should be brave, try to piss off your instructors with crazy work, make even crazier work. I think go towards those things that you're afraid of, that you think you can't do, just do them anyway. Um, don't worry about the future unless you are really in a position you have to, then you have to. Like I don't want to be someone who's saying like you need to um, do crazy crazy stuff if you're in a situation you shouldn't be.
We
Yeah.
have a couple more questions. One is from Kavya. Where do you recommend getting fabric online?
Okay. Best place if you want to upcycle, eBay. eBay is great. I also recommend Mood. It's like a little more expensive, but Mood is great. B&J Fabrics is amazing. That is very expensive, but you can buy swatches there and you can save up for some really beautiful. If you want just like, if you need to just make, like, it is better that you make one thing out of expensive material and save and make it out of the cheapest something, like make it out of a bin bag, make it out of like a trash can, but have like gorgeous expensive silk. Like, yeah, B&J Fabric, Mood Fabrics. Google it. There's so many places online that you can find things that aren't Joann's. Because Joann's is such a high markup, it's crazy. You're overpaying. Don't do it. It's a mafia thing.
Thank you. A little kind of unexpected question, but I'll still share my job is to relay the question. So
Yeah.
So Dane Fraser is asking, hey, have you gave up on your work? Which
Dane Fraser, I thought we were friends. I think no, I haven't given up my work. But what I'll say is that a lot of the sort of most crazy, I think like what you've seen in my work is like this. You see the really crazy stuff from when I was in school, and then you see the sort of more sober stuff. And I just find that like, as you get older, you just want to make different things. So I just keep that. But what I'll say is this sort of what we've been working on the tech side of things, that's really been putting all this like really crazy ideas into practice. So like if you're thinking more along the lines of what I did in my MA or my BA, like that's where that exists, but it's just under wraps. And so that's why sort of like all the work I've done the last 2 years has been sort of really sober and just very like real, because I've been in this sort of imaginary place. So unfortunately, you're just seeing the sort of more straightforward side of things lately.
Yeah, thank you. We don't have any more questions. We had about 20 attendees watching us between Zoom and YouTube and sharing questions on both channels. And we will now wrap up the recording, but we will stay a little bit longer on Zoom with the guests who joined us through this channel, through Zoom, and then we will stay for a few more minutes to regroup and close the conversation. And thank you so much, Edwin. That was such a treat and inspiration for all of us.
Oh my gosh, no problem.
And
Thank
for
you.
everyone who will watch us in the recording afterwards. Thank you so much for your time in London.
No problem. Thank you.
Connecting with us. You for sure will hear from many of the attendees of this session and those who will be watching us